أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. This is our 17th episode in Introduction to Rijal Studies. In the previous lectures we finished our discussion regarding mass authentications. Today we will discuss a new chapter. We will begin a new chapter in علم الرجال, and that is called توثيقات أمارات التوثيقات or أمارات الوثاقة, indicators of reliability. The difference between mass authentications and indicators of reliability is that in mass authentications we were authenticating a big number of individuals and transmitters at one time. We were authenticating 30, 40, 200, 300 individuals all at one time. With indicators of reliability, amarat al-wathaqa, we're looking for clues to see who's reliable and who's not reliable. Something about their lives, certain qualities, certain characteristics that deem a person reliable, trustworthy, and we can rely on that person's narrations. This is what is meant by indicators of reliability. This person has certain qualities. We're looking for those qualities that indicate a person is reliable, that indicate that this person is trustworthy. The first indicator of reliability that we will discuss is mashayikh al-ijaza. What is meant by mashayikh al-ijaza? There were certain individuals, certain scholars, or you could even say teachers, because mashayikh literally means teachers. Shaykh means a teacher. Previously, when someone would say, this person's my shaykh, that means he's my teacher. These individuals were teachers of top scholars like Al-Shaykh al-Saduq, Al-Kulayni, and Al-Shaykh al-Tusi. They were their teachers. But the problem is that these individuals are not authenticated explicitly. No one has come out and said that these people are reliable. This individual is reliable. This individual is trustworthy. Let's take, for example, Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Yahya. Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Yahya is a famous narrator. He's a famous transmitter of hadith who was a teacher to Shaykh al-Tusi and this level of scholars. So he did not witness any of the imams, but he helped transmit the hadith and traditions of the imams to a Shaykh al-Tusi and that level of scholars. He's considered Shaykh Ijaza. What do we mean exactly by Shaykh Ijaza? This sort of teacher, like Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Yahya, or Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn al-Hasan ibn al-Walid, this is another teacher, another scholar, another Shaykh Ijaza, who has not explicitly been mentioned within authentication. No one has said that he's reliable or credible. However, he's a Shaykh Ijaza. These individuals, they received a lot of narrations. They had a lot of narrations and books of hadith in their possession. And then they passed them down to other top scholars like a Shaykh al-Tusi. And they gave them permission to narrate from them. They gave them permission to narrate from them. So, Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Yahya had, let's say, lots of books and in his possession. Which kind of books? Usul, the narrations, books that consisted of the narrations of the imams. He had them in his possession, and then he passed them on to Shaykh al-Tusi, and he gave him permission to narrate from him on his authority. So you will see a lot of narrations. Shaykh Tusi will say, on the authority of Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Yahya, from so and so, from so and so, from Imam Sadiq. And he'll narrate the hadith. So Shaykh Tusi, for example, will narrate lots of traditions on the authority of this individual, this Shaykh, Shaykh al-Ijaza, who received the narrations, and he passed them on down to Shaykh Tusi, and he gave him permission to narrate from him on his authority. He told him, you may narrate, and you may say that you've narrated from me, on my authority. This is basically what Shaykh al-Ijaza means. Now there's a huge debate whether Shaykhukhat al-Ijaza, meaning a person of this caliber, this sort of individual, who is a teacher to top scholars, and who has given them permission to transmit the hadith that have reached him. Hence we will be calling him Shaykh al-Ijaza. There's a huge debate whether these people are reliable, these sort of individuals are reliable or are they unreliable. The problem is, Shaykh Tusi in his book Al-Rijal and Najashi in his book Al-Rijal, they haven't mentioned them explicitly as being reliable and trustworthy. Although they've mentioned others, but they've left out some of their own teachers, like Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Yahya, like Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn al-Hasan ibn al-Walid. These people have not been mentioned explicitly. They haven't told us whether they're reliable, and they haven't told us that they're not reliable either. So we don't really know. So just the fact that he's a Shaykh Ijaza, that he has received books of hadith and he's passing them on down to his students and he's giving them permission to narrate on their authority, does that make him someone reliable or unreliable? If we say that this person is unreliable, that means a big portion or a good percentage of the 4 books of hadith, for example, At-Tahdhib and Al-Istibsar, will no longer be valid, because a good portion of them were narrated on the authority of such individuals who have not been explicitly authenticated, but at the same time they're Shaykh Ijaza. So this debate has lots of implications on hadith. Now there's a lot of scholars, like Al-Shahid al-Thani, his son, Al-Shaykh Hassan, known as Sahib al-Ma'alim, Al-Wahid al-Bahbahani, Al-Sayyid al-Damad, Al-Shaykh Yusuf al-Bahrani, Al-Muhaddith al-Nuri, the author of Musaddarak al-Wasail. These scholars have all come out and said that Shaykh Ijaza is definitely thiqah. He's definitely reliable and trustworthy. In fact, some have come out and said that being a Shaykh Ijaza is above being reliable and credible. This person does not need to be mentioned in a book stating that he's reliable or unreliable. Let me give you an example. It's like someone who writes a book, publishes a book today in this age, and mentions the people that are reliable and trustworthy, and he mentions, for example, Sayyid Sistani or some of our top maraja as being reliable. Some will say this is ridiculous. Sayyid Sistani does not need wathaqa. He does not need anyone to say that he's reliable. Of course he's reliable. It's ridiculous to even say that he's reliable, because he's above this. So there's some scholars that say Shaykh al-Ijaza is above being reliable and unreliable. So this is one theory. This is the first opinion, that Shaykh al-Ijaza does not need authentication. Just simply a person being Shaykh al-Ijaza is an indicator of reliability. He does not need to be explicitly mentioned as thiqah. So what's their proof? There's 2 main proofs for this and evidence. One is that they say these individuals are so famous, Shaykh al-Ijaza, they're so famous for their reliability and trustworthiness that they are not mentioned in the books of Rijal. When someone is clearly trustworthy, you don't need to mention him in your book stating that he's thiqah. So this is one. Two, when a person like a Sheikh al-Tusi or a Najashi or al-Kulaini, they go to a Sheikh al-Ijaza and they ask him for permission to give them the books that he has in his possession, to give it to them or to narrate it to them. So for example, Shaykh al-Ijaza might have a small book of one of the companions of the Imam. Shaykh al-Tusi will come and tell him, can you please dictate to me the narrations in this book and allow me to transmit those hadith on your authority. Allow me to say that you gave me these narrations. This is what Shaykh al-Ijaza means. He's a teacher of hadith that allows you to transmit a hadith on his authority. Well, would Shaykh al-Tusi or Kulaini or Najashi go to someone who's unreliable and untrustworthy and ask him for permission to narrate on his authority? Obviously not. Obviously not. He has to be reliable. On the other hand, there are those that argue that no, a Shaykh al-Ijaza, being Shaykh al-Ijaza is not an indicator of trustworthiness and reliability. How? They say, well, a lot of these books of hadith, they were widespread. So when Shaykh al-Tusi asked for permission to narrate these books on that person's authority, this was just for blessings. Otherwise, that book was widespread and it was popular everywhere. Let me give you an example. It's like today I go to a scholar's home and I find the book of Al-Kafi and I tell him, may I take this book from you and tell people that I'm narrating this book on your behalf? This is for blessing. Otherwise, I don't need to narrate on his authority. The book is published, it's popular, it's everywhere. I don't need a chain of narrators to narrate from this book. When do you need a chain of narrators? When the book is very rare and no one has the book, and you need a chain, an authentic chain of narrators to say that this book reached me in an authentic way. But if the book is widespread, you no longer need a chain of narrators. You don't need to mention who you're narrating, on whose authority you're narrating. So this is another argument. And the other argument is that simply seeking permission from Shaykh al-Ijaza to narrate on his authority, this is for blessing. You're taking his blessing. It's not meant to be literal, that you're narrating on his authority and that he's reliable. Because he's a reliable person, you're narrating on his authority. No, it's not like that. It's out of blessings. So the first opinion is that Shaykh al-Ijaza is, Shaykhukat al-Ijaza is an indicator of reliability. The other opinion is that no, it's not an indicator of reliability. And among those who held this opinion was Al-Muhaqqiq al-Tustari. In his book Qamus al-Rijal, he said, if the book is widespread, it's a popular book that everyone has, then Shaykh al-Ijaza, when he passes that book down to, for example, Shaykh al-Tusi, then he essentially has no role, because that book is already widespread. So what he's doing is just giving his blessings. So we don't really need to know if he's reliable or not reliable, because the book is already widespread. Kitabun mashhur. Whether he's reliable or not won't do a difference, won't make a difference, because the book is already popular. It's spread everywhere. And if the book is not popular and not widespread, then we need an authentic chain of narrators. We need a chain of reliable individuals that narrate from one individual to another. And since Shaykh al-Ijaza has not been mentioned explicitly as being reliable, we cannot rely on him. So the question is, so basically Muhaqqiq al-Tustari says that Mashayikhat al-Ijaza is meaningless. Because if the book is popular, we can rely on its popularity without the need to refer to Shaykh al-Ijaza. And if the book is not reliable, we need for the Shaykh al-Ijaza to be thiqah. And hence, because he's not explicitly mentioned as being thiqah, we cannot rely on that individual. So this is one opinion. Of course, another opinion by Sayyid al-Khoi. Sayyid al-Khoi says that Mashakhat al-Ijaza is meaningless just because a person is Shaykh al-Ijaza, he's a teacher of hadith and he passes on narrations down to his students, it doesn't mean anything. Shaykh al-Tusi, yes, he narrates on the authority of such an individual, but so what? When a reliable person narrates from another individual, does that mean that person is reliable? No. Look at your everyday life. You might be someone who is reliable. When you're telling a story to your friends, you might rely on reliable sources and you might rely on non-reliable sources. Just because you mention a story from someone, that doesn't make that individual reliable. So just because a reliable person relies on someone, that doesn't mean he's reliable. رواية الثقة عن شخص لا يدل على وثاقته. This is the argument of Sayyid al-Khoi. Sayyid Muhammad al-Sistani, hafidhahullah, our teacher, and apparently this is the opinion of his father as well, is that Shaykh al-Ijaza, his role was it was an informal role. It was for blessing. Shaykh al-Ijaza simply gives his blessing in narrating those books of hadith. His role wasn't a real role in that Shaykh al-Tusi, for example, would literally rely on him in order to narrate and transmit a hadith. And if he's not reliable, then that hadith is deemed unreliable. No. These books were widespread, they were known, and Shaykh al-Ijaza was simply giving his blessing in narrating those narrations. Now, I'm summarizing what I've written on this. I personally believe that Shaykh al-Ijaza is an indicator of reliability. One, when someone like a Shaykh al-Tusi goes and he seeks permission from, for example, Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Yahya, and he tells him, give me permission to narrate from you, it's only logical that that person is reliable. He would not go to someone who's da'if, kadhab, and he would tell him, give me permission to narrate these books on your authority. So this is one. It's logical, it's rational that this person has to be reliable. Otherwise, a person like a Shaykh al-Tusi would not rely on him. This is one. Two, well, some might say, why haven't these individuals been mentioned in the books of Rijal and have been explicitly mentioned to be thiqah, to be reliable? Well, first of all, books of Rijal were very small. Rijal al-Shaykh al-Tusi, Rijal al-Najashi. These were small books of Rijal and they don't contain everyone. Not all of the narrators and transmitters have been mentioned in these books. This is one. Two, the purpose of writing these books, and I've mentioned this in previous lectures, I believe, when a Shaykh al-Tusi wrote his Rijal and his Fihrist, his goal was not to say who's reliable and who's not reliable. No. In his book Al-Rijal, he wrote his book to mention every Imam, every Ma'soom and his companions and who narrated from him. So he was showing us the levels of the companions historically. And in his Fihrist, his objective was to tell us which of these companions and transmitters wrote books and what's the name of their books. Yes, he does tell us who's reliable and who's not reliable sometimes, not all the time. And that shows that that wasn't his main goal. Same goes for Shaykh al-Najashi. In his book, Al-Rijal, he wrote, in fact, the name of Rijal al-Najashi is Fihrist Musannif al-Shi'a, the book of the collection of the names of the authors among the Shia, those who wrote books. So that was the purpose, to say who wrote books. And sometimes when he says so-and-so is reliable and another person's unreliable, he does it by chance. Otherwise, that was not his objective. So just because Shaykh al-Ijaza is not mentioned in Rijal, for example, a person like Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Yahya or Ahmed ibn Muhammad ibn al-Hasan ibn al-Walid, this doesn't mean that he's unreliable. Another issue is, just because a book is widespread, what do you mean a book is widespread? There were books that were famous and popular, but their manuscripts, they were not popular. Every book had a manuscript, and those manuscripts differed because they were transcribed by hand. There were no computers. So these manuscripts, they differed. Some had an additional hadith, some didn't have that. Why? Because humans are not free of error. They make mistakes. They might forget a line, they might add another line by mistake. So that manuscript needs an authentic chain of narrators. Just because the actual book is popular and is well known, it doesn't mean that its manuscripts, al-nusakh, they were widespread as well. The manuscripts need an authentic chain of narrators, and that was the job of Shaykh al-Ijaza. Another problem is that some of Shuyukh al-Ijaza, we've been told that some of them are weak. Well, this is not a problem. Why? Because those that we've been told are weak, we can leave them. It's just like when Shaykh al-Tusi tells us that a transmitter is weak, and then Najashi tells us that no, that transmitter is reliable. Well, what do? We leave that transmitter. Same thing, if we know this person is a Shaykh al-Ijaza, but Najashi tells us that he's weak, we'll leave him. But someone else who's a Shaykh al-Ijaza and no one has said that he's weak or unreliable, we can rely on that Shaykh al-Ijaza, and hence we deem that Shaykhukhat al-Ijaza is an indicator of reliability. We move on to another indicator of reliability, and that is al-wikala an al-imam. If a transmitter is known to have been a wakil, a representative of the imam, of an imam, one of the 12 imams, simply by being a wakil, a representative, is that an indicator of reliability or not? Let's say the imam appoints this person to be his representative in so-and-so city. He answers people's questions, he collects people's religious dues and taxes like khums and zakat. He's the imam's emissary, he sends him to places to speak on behalf of the imam. Or he works at the office, at the house of the imam. He greets people. He does work for the imam. Maybe he even does shopping for the imam. This is all kinds of wikala. He's a representative of the imam. He's an employee for the imam. Any sort of employee for the imam. Does this entail him being reliable or unreliable? Here, there's three opinions. One opinion says yes. If a person was a representative and wakil of an imam, if he collected khums on behalf of the imam, if he spoke in the name of the imam, if he answered questions on behalf of the imam, if the imam would send him to places, if he works inside the house of the imam, he's the head of the office of the imam. Office, obviously, back then there were no offices, but he works at the home of the imam. The person is reliable. So this is one view, and there are several scholars that believe in this. Another view is that no, being wakil al-imam does not mean anything, because someone could be unreliable, someone could be fasiq, he doesn't pray, he doesn't fast, maybe he even drinks, yet you could give him wikala. Even in fiqh, you could give wikala, power of attorney or power of representation to someone who's a fasiq. So just because the imams give a wikala to someone, it doesn't make him reliable. The third view says we have to differentiate between the kinds of wikala. If the imam gave a wikala to someone to collect khums, to collect zakat, to answer questions, yes, this is an indicator of reliability. But if this person is simply working at home, or he does shopping for the imam, or he's a security guard at the house of the Imam, this is not an indicator of wikala. And this is a third opinion. Now the first opinion, which says that simply being a wakil of an Imam makes you reliable. What is their proof? They say that, look at Siratul Uqala, look at rational people. It's only logical that when an Imam gives a wakala to someone, that person has to be reliable. Would you make someone your wakil and that person's not reliable, that person's not trustworthy, that person might lie? Would you assign him to represent you in a city and collect khums and collect money on your behalf? No. Would you allow him to answer questions on your behalf? No. Would you send him from place to place? No. You won't even allow him to be a security guard or even work at your home. If that person's unreliable and untrustworthy, how can you bring this person in your home? And you have money at home, you have cash, you have your woman and children. This person has to be reliable, at least in your eyes. At least you believe that this person is reliable. So the first opinion says it's only logical. Look at maraji' today. If you hear that a marji' has a representative that is unreliable, wouldn't you be shocked? You'd be shocked. So how can we accept this for the Imam? That the Imam had representatives that were unreliable. If you can't accept this for the marji', how can you accept this for the Imam? So this is one opinion. The other opinion, which says they are a wakil, does not necessarily have to be thiqah, is that indeed some of the representatives of the Imams were unreliable, who even became deviant, like Ali ibn Abi Hamza al-Bata'ani. Ali ibn Abi Hamza al-Bata'ani was the representative of Imam al-Kadhim. After the death of Imam al-Kadhim, he had a lot of money with him, maybe 30,000 dinars. He refused to give it to Imam al-Rida. And he even denied the Imam of Imam al-Rida. So he became a deviant, he lied, and he stole the money, although he was a representative of the Imam. And there were others as well. So there were representatives that were frauds, that were fraudulent. So how could they be reliable? The answer is that, first of all, when the Imams give a wakala, it's only logical that that person has to be reliable. Maybe later on in his life he becomes unreliable and untrustworthy, that's another issue. But at the time when he received the wakala, no doubt he was reliable. When Imam al-Kadhim gave wakala to al-Bata'ani, Ali ibn Abi Hamza al-Bata'ani, he was definitely reliable. Later on maybe he changed. Yes, this is a possibility. This is one. Two, even if that person changes later on, let's say for 10 years he was a good representative, and then he switches and he goes rogue, he becomes fraudulent. And let's say he had traditions and narrations. The narrations that he uttered and stated while he was a good person, why can't we take those narrations? Yes, when he switched and he became unreliable, we can no longer rely on him. But when he was mustaqim, when he was a good person, why can't we rely on him? And hence, Ali ibn Abi Hamza al-Bata'ani, some scholars say that we have to differentiate from the days that he was good and from the days that he was bad. We can take the narrations that have been proven to have been stated by him when he was good, even if we don't have any proof other than the fact that he was a wakil. That means he was reliable. That means the Imam saw him as someone who is reliable. We can rely on him. Once he switched, we can no longer rely on him. So any hadith that was stated by him after the days of Imam al-Rida, after the Imam of Imam al-Rida, we can't rely on him. But any hadith that was stated during the days of Imam al-Kadhim, we can rely on him. This is the second opinion. The third opinion states that we can rely on the representative, and if he was designated to receive money, to answer questions, but if he was simply doing shopping for the imam or guarding the house of the imam, we can't rely on him. But we feel that even a person who's a guard or works at the house of the imam, he has to be someone who is reliable. Imagine if you hear that some of the maraji' in their homes, they have individuals that are unreliable that are working with them. Although there's money at home, there's important papers, there's secrets, there's secret meetings. There are meetings that have to have a low profile. Imagine if those individuals were unreliable, would the marja' keep him at his house? No. So we feel that wikala an al-imam, a person being a wakil on behalf of the imam, is an indicator of reliability, and we will continue, inshallah, the indicators of reliability in the next lecture. بإذن الله والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.